Good afternoon, everyone. As Norton said, I'm Bob Steele. I'm Vice President of Information Systems and Technology at SPS. So I thought to start out, give everybody a little background about what we do at Strategic Power Systems to try and lay some context on how we've been able to utilize Pi Cloud Connect to provide some additional value and productivity benefit for our customers. So at SPS, everything we do is about data. We collect, validate, analyze, and provide reliability and availability benchmarking information in the energy industry, specifically gas turbines and steam turbines, and power, platform, and pipeline applications, renewables, and then deep sea drilling equipment, blowout preventers. So everything we do is centered around our system ORAP. We're a third-party, unbiased company. We collect data from all different manufacturers of the equipment across all different applications and duty cycles. When we process and validate the data, we apply industry standards to make sure that we're treating the data consistently across all the different plants and processing the data for benchmarking purposes. As you can see, we have over 3,000 gas and steam turbines reporting, 600 to 700 wind turbines, and over 1,000 rigs for blowout preventers. So the ORAP system is all based upon data collection from the power plant. So as you can see, we collect data, whether it's event, age, and operational information from the power plant. Today, a good number of that is still manual data collection. When the data gets to our offices or data center in Charlotte, we go through an automated and manual validation process, again, applying those industry standards to make sure we're treating the data consistently across all the different data that's coming in. Once it goes through that validation process, we report it back out and provide the benchmarking information to our customers through our ORAP analytics portal. So our challenge is, as I just said, much of our data still comes in a manual process. So back in the late 90s, early 2000 time period, we developed a system to take the process data from the control system, the DCS or the historian at the plant, and apply transformation logic to that converted it to the time, capacity, and events that we're interested in from a reliability perspective. The whole idea there was to reduce the manual input for the folks at the plant, improve the data quality and timeliness. So that was the challenge that we were faced with. So before we started using Pi Cloud Connect, what that system looked like was basically we had a server and custom software installed on the sites. So we had to go in, configure the hardware, the software, set up the database, set up all the communications drivers, and set up the transformation logic. So that was 3 or 4 days on site with a project engineer configuring things, working with the folks at the plant to map addresses, and then set up VPN connections, to transfer the data back to our data center in Charlotte. And again, we were only transferring the results of the logic, not the raw data. So if there were any problems or issues or we updated anything, we had to go back to the plant and try and get that information. So, the constraints were basically all centered around having to install hardware and software at multiple locations and maintain that software. So we had to set up OPC drivers. Any of you who have dealt with DCOM, that was my first intro as a mechanical engineer to networking, and it's something I don't ever want to do again. So, in addition to DCOM, we had Modbus, everything else. So it was a custom configured communications driver. Again, all the hardware and software set up. And then, to ensure the security, we set up dedicated VPNs to all these sites. So we had to maintain on both sides the VPN. Later, we switched to a web service, but it was still a custom web service for each data transfer situation. So what we're able to do with using Pi Cloud Connect is basically eliminate all that hardware and software on site. we're now leveraging our customers' existing Pi systems to get the data that we need to provide the transformations to give them the benchmarking data that they need. So we're leveraging, again, the existing infrastructure on the data collection. It's now a little bit more scalable and maintainable because we don't have any custom hardware or software on site. We're using what's already there. So as you can imagine, I said 3-4 days to set up the system on site. Now, in our first 4 or 5, we've got that down to less than 3 hours remotely. So how does it work? The first thing we did is we created a generic asset framework template. So we're able to give our customer a list of these are the tags that we need to provide you with the benchmarking information as a service. So we send them the asset framework template, they load it up, map their tags, and they publish the template through Pi Cloud Connect. Now it sounds very simple, but the reality is it is that simple. It's very straightforward. At least from my perspective, I don't have to map the tags anymore. So how and why did we build the AF template? So one of the things that we've been able to do by using the AF template, our logic is looking for a tag to be named a certain way. So let's say in a gas turbine, we're looking for flame detected. Siemens may call it something different than GE does, but our logic wants to see flame detected. So we've created the AF template to utilize the tag names that we're looking for so we don't have to change our logic. It all comes in the way we need it. The other thing is, this is existing customers, and our reliability data is a relational structure. So we've built the template in a hierarchical manner to match what already exists in our relational database. So we can use the GWIDs in our relational database and tie that exactly to the customer site plant unit that we use in our database in the AF template. The other thing we've done is by having this, instead of being a custom system on site, we've been able to decouple some things so we can give the customer exactly the capability that they want. But what we've done is we've created the template with everything. So when we give the customer the template, if they're only using a portion of it, they filter the elements and only map the tags that they need. But then if they want to, add additional capability later on, they just unfilter it and map those other tags. They're picked up by the publication, sent to our data center, and run through the logic. I think this covers some of the things I already just talked about, but again, we're able to genericize things so it's specific to what we need, but maps the customer's infrastructure. So then once the data gets to our data center, how does that work? So again, we wanted to use our existing logic. We didn't want to recreate this logic that we've been developing for the past 15, 20 years. So by using the SDKs, we were able to create a service that extracts the data from Pi. Our transformation logic is based on once a second data, so it'll extrapolate to once a second and run that through the existing logic. No changes. So then once it goes through the logic, as I mentioned previously, it goes through the validation process and then up to our analytics portal, just as if it was coming from our bespoke system on site. So as I mentioned, we created a service, but in addition to extracting the data from Pi, it's allowed us to do some other things. So we have some validation checks going on there before the data gets into the logic. That way, if there's an issue, we're alerted. The customer account manager can get in touch with the site and say, there's something going on with the data that we're receiving from your Pi system. Is it a sensor problem? Or are you doing maintenance? What's going on? And again, the big thing here is no changes to our existing logic. We've basically just leveraged Pi as the collection point, moved this transformation from the site to our central data center. So if you remember those constraints that I talked about earlier on, we've basically removed them. So instead of an on-site installation, we now do a remote installation. The customer performs all the configuration on their existing Pi system. If they need support, we can provide that, but we've found to this point we really don't have to do much, just help them along the way. No more decom. So I don't have to deal with decom. You know, we're leveraging what exists already at the site. And then the generic AF template, like I mentioned, so we don't have to configure and maintain a local database. You know, hardware and system maintenance, we're leveraging our customers' existing infrastructure. They've already got maintenance and everything in place. We don't have to do anything different. And then again, Cloud Connect, we don't have to set up a dedicated VPN. And then this last point is something that's, I don't know, speaking personally, I'm not sure if I realized this was going to be a benefit for us or not, but it's turned out to be kind of a boon. We now have all the raw data on site, so if we want to do an additional algorithm or enhance the capability, we now have the data to do that. If our customer wants something additional, we don't have to go back and try and backfill things manually. We have that data in our Pi system. We can run it through the logic. So another thing that was really important to us was data security. I'm not sure if anybody here is in the power generation industry, but we're all very cognizant of NERC CIPS compliance. So when you talk to somebody at a power plant, their first question is it CIPS compliant? Well, with Pi Cloud Connect, it is CIPS compliant. We don't have to necessarily worry about that because it's built upon the plant's security infrastructure that's already in place. So this is actually a snapshot from one of our marketing brochures. I have no pride of ownership here. But basically, it's just saying, you know, between OSI and Pi and what we've done for the past 30 years at SPS, the data is secured and it's CIPS compliant. And how do we do this? This is kind of just a thumbnail sketch, but again, the Pi Cloud Connect node is set up in this DMZ at the power plant or at the customer's central data center, and it communicates through the cloud HTTPS to our Connect node that's in our DMZ at our local facility. So again, it's utilizing the existing security infrastructure and DMZ that's already there. We don't really have to do anything new or different to secure the Pi system. So again, what has this done? It's at the end of the day, it's provided us an opportunity to unbundle some of our products for our customers, reduce the amount of logistics. There's reduced the cost because of the logistics and the hardware, software maintenance that's no longer required. So we're extending the value and providing our customers productivity benefit by utilizing Pi Cloud Connect. So I think I mentioned this yesterday. What we're doing is we're helping the power plants run their plants, not run reports. So, you know, reducing the data collection requirements by 85 to 90% to provide the reliability benchmarking information. You know, and it also provides, in addition to the benchmarking information, for those of us in North America, power plants have to report to NERC GADS. It's a federal requirement. By reporting into ORAP and using the automated system, we can satisfy that requirement for them without additional manual input. And then there's additional things beyond the benchmarking that we can do, such as looking at aging parameters on the components in their plant, and then adding on thermal performance to layer on top of the reliability information. So going forward, what do we intend to do? Well, as I mentioned, we've got the data now in the Pi system at our central facility. So as our customers are looking at additional capabilities, we have the ability to add that for them. So we're just piloting this. We have it at 5 or 6 sites. The intent over the next couple of years is to roll it out to as many of our customers as possible. Reduce the manual input that they have to provide, increase the timeliness of the data, as well as the accuracy. It's a lot more accurate to calculate the amount of time a unit ran in a month from the control system than from what the operator wrote down in a logbook. And then we'll be taking the same process and transferring it to the other verticals that we work in. So this is just a summary of what I've just kind of gone through. The challenge was to provide productivity benefit to our customers. The solution was based upon using Pi Cloud Connect to replace a custom hardware and software solution at the site. And the results is we now have a scalable, data-driven solution that allows us to expand it out to all of our customers. So that's really all I had for slides today. So I don't know how we're doing on time. I know it was probably a little bit shorter than 45 minutes, but I'd like to see if anybody has any questions or anything we can talk about. I'll at least try and answer them.
What's the rate limiting factor in getting this out to all your customers? If you could snap your fingers and have it in everybody's hands tomorrow, there would be value there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think it's probably a combination of things. Probably the biggest thing is the ability, we're a smaller business, being able to get to all of our customers, and work them through the process. That's one challenge. The other challenge is, quite frankly, some of our customers today are in parts of the world where they're not ready for this. Their infrastructure won't necessarily support it. So we've got to help bring them along as well. So it's more of a timing thing than anything else. Today we have 850 power plants all reporting, so it's a scale issue. I don't know if that answered your question, but.
Hi, I work at a utility that has a nuclear plant, and I'm hearing that we haven't made a decision yet if we're going to use Pi Cloud Connect, or we're not ready to use it, or something like that.
Yep.
And I'm just wondering, what do you hear as arguments or concerns about Pi Cloud Connect?
So I guess if I put on two hats as the IT guy at our company, I have one answer, and as the person that's working with our customers, I probably have another. So my first hat, I initially was very hesitant about sending data through the cloud. But at the end of the day, taking a look at it, the right safeguards are in place, and as long as you have your firewalls and everything in place, it shouldn't be an issue. So that's number one. But it did take me a while to get that comfort level from our perspective. Now, if I look at it from the customers, the biggest thing or the biggest challenge that we found is folks don't understand the process. So a lot of times you'll go in and the first question is, well, I don't want to send my data to the cloud. The reality is, the way the process is set up, it's just a waypoint almost. So as long as you have connections on both sides, there's very little transit time, so to speak. So it's not sitting there for perpetuity in the cloud somewhere for somebody to go take a look at. And again, it's all based upon your existing infrastructure. But then the other piece is at the end of the day, we're transferring raw data that unless somebody knows what that data is, it's just ones and zeros, So it's not necessarily commercially sensitive. It's not going to cause a problem where somebody could get back into the facility. It's really just data coming across until the logic and the knowledge is put around that data. It's just that data until you convert it to the information. So it's HTTPS, so it's encrypted through SSL, through certificates. But on the database side, it's just whatever's coming across from Pi.
So I'm kind of curious about your asset framework structure, whether or not you use a CIM as a basis for developing that structure, and how do you keep the different customers separate in your structure?
Okay,
Or do you?
So I'll have to apologize in terms of what CIM and the details of that. I have to plead a little bit of ignorance.
A common information model,
okay.
IEC standards.
Yeah, okay. So I'll explain what we've done, and we'll see if that answers your question. And if not, I'll have the folks who actually did the setup, I'll get with them and get you an answer. But so the way we set it up is, within our existing relational database, we've already got a hierarchical structure that's customer, site, plant, equipment, and then underneath the equipment, we go down to a part level. So we already have a structure to differentiate, take utility A from utility B, site X from site Y. So we've just mimicked that in a template, and then when the customer signs on, we go in and we take that template with the generic names, put the specific information for that site that ties it to the GUID or the global unique identifier that's already in our relational database. So while it's generic, before we send it to the customer, we fill in that hierarchical information. So did that address your question?
One part of it. The other part is whether or not the CIM provides you a global type of framework that different kinds of parameters could be stored. I didn't know if you looked at that at all. It doesn't sound like it.
Yeah, I apologize. But I can check into that and get you an answer. If we talk after, I'll get your info.
Yeah, I had a question on the information that you end up producing for your customers, and how they get that results back. Is it something, what would it make sense at any point in time to use PyCloud Connect to put it back? Obviously not into a secure area, but into another like higher level, up in the an enterprise level Pi server, rather than actually giving them a report or something.
Yeah, so yes and no. There may be some value to send something back through Pi, but ultimately what we're doing with our transformation logic is we're taking the time series data and converting it to, it's more of a relational thing that looks at the availability and reliability. And one of the big benefits to our customers is the benchmarking information. And there's shared ownership in the data that they benchmark against. So if I'm at plant A, I can see my specific information and see how that compares against a fleet of like units. But I can't see specifically what plant B contributed to that. And then there's a whole nother level of complexity there, because the manufacturers may have access to see this detail on plant A, but not this detail on plant B. So that's built into our security model, which is delivered there. So all that data is delivered through our analytics portal, and it's based upon a BI tool where they can drill down and slice and dice and look at the data that way. Going forward, as we're adding additional capability, let's say the thermal performance data, if the customer has a need or a want to store that in their system, we could use Cloud Connect to send that back. But again, one of the benefits or the big parts of the service we provide is the visualization. So, we could send it back, but then the visualization piece is missing. So.
Hi. We looked at the connector some years ago when it was first beta tested and whatever, and we got concerned around the publish-subscribe model, where the publisher could not see really who was actively subscribing to data, and that the subscriber could take multiple feeds off the data coming in from the source without the source knowing about that data being multiply streamed. So, I mean, we had a concern, plus the fact that the system was based on a Microsoft account to an individual rather than any sort of limited IP space or any sort of limitations on a network area. So yeah, I'm wondering if that's improved over time.
Yeah, so I can't speak to how it was previously, especially with the betas, but so the way I understand and how we've seen the publication subscriber, it's specific. So the plant basically sets up the publication, invites us to subscribe. Now it is based upon a live account. So we've got a live account that's set up specific to that. But it's based upon that server that you're subscribing to, and on the publication side and the web page, you can see who's subscribing, what they're subscribing to, and if it's active. So I'm pretty sure you can see where the data is going to, and you can stop that at any point in time.
Not in a multi-stream situation.
Yeah.
If you had an employee, or not an employee, a person who had a subscription, you can't basically stop them from going off-site, streaming the data and then selling it to someone.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess so, I guess that would kind of be true of any data stream, right?
Well,
So unless it's a point-to-point VPN,
Yeah.
but anything that's going out, you'd have to have some kind of level around that.
We also at some point in the past we had pushback with clients about that live account thing. So do you have like one live account per customer, and do they just do a shared password? I mean, boo. And the other question is, have you gotten like pushback from customers because of regulations and stuff about more detailed security reviews with OSIsoft, and how did you go about that? Because I mean, after all, the data does go into the cloud.
Yeah. So I can only speak to the customers that we've got set up so far. And it's a single plant publishing to our system, and they have one account that does that. But whether they've set that up internally, I don't have visibility to whether they've set it up as a generic or to the specific IT person. We do go through reviews. So we've had audits done in the past to make sure that everything's secure. And we do typically, when we set up with a customer, whether it's a security document or however it's set up, we do go through a process that's customer specific. So.
I was wondering, that slide that you said that you actually send the data to NERC GADS, is that right?
Yes, at the customer's request.
Okay.
So
how is I think we're thinking about doing this like very soon, and there seems to be some data that needs to come out of somebody's head.
right.
How do you
Yeah, so that's the 10 to 15% that we can't automate. We still need a person to tell us what actually happened, what equipment was the problem in, how long did it take to fix it.
Right.
So, we're trying to focus, instead of the guy at the plant telling us how long they ran and how much energy they produced, focus on the value add of what happened and what you do to fix it.
Okay.
So.
Okay, thank you.
So there is still that piece that you need to manually do.
Just a question on out-of-order data. Is there any issues? Have you seen anything along those lines? If someone corrects a value after the first time it comes through, do we see out-of-order data going across the Pi-to-Pi, the Pi Connect?
We haven't, we haven't had that challenge to this point. So, but in the service, we've built in some auditing. So if there's a data gap or we haven't received data in a certain period of time, we'll flag. Today it's flagging our internal staff, but as we get a little more sophisticated, we'll probably have the alerts go directly back to the customer. But the feed that we're getting is more or less real time. So, if they go back and change something, the way we've got it set it up today, it'll have already been processed through the system. So if there is gaps or there are problems, there's still a manual interface where the operator could go in and backfill that information. You know, if the communications at the site go down and they're not getting the data into their PI system, you know, there's no way to go back and get that. They have got to manually enter that. So.
Any more questions? This is great. I love to get all these questions. Some really good ones. Nothing? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Bob. Oh. Oh.
All right.
You're just so popular, Bob.
I'm Tom Pardue from Eastman Chemical Company, and I just had have you found any downsides? I mean, are there any negatives to implementing this?
It's a tough one. Yeah, you know, I think, you know, for everything there's trade-offs, but in this case, the benefits far outweigh any of the challenges that we've come across. You know, and quite honestly, some of the challenges is, you know, we're very new to Pi. I mean, I've been out in a power plant and I've connected an OPC connection to a Pi server to collect data through an OPC client and send it. But, you know, we're new to the whole Pi system. So we're learning a little bit as we go along. So I think the challenges are more because of that as opposed to the enabling technology. I mean, it definitely, the benefits far outweigh any of the challenges we've had so far. So.
I was just going to do it. Well, I'll just get this afterwards.
Just wondering, does the Cloud Connect, does it offer Pi buffering like other Pi interface nodes?
Yeah.
So that if you do lose connection or something other with your Pi?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything's buffered. So, you know, if there's a issue between the plant and Cloud Connect or between Cloud Connect and our servers, it all buffers, and as soon as that connection comes back up, the data comes through. So, you know, again, if the communications between the DCS or the control system and the Pi system are down, you know, that data's lost, but it buffers throughout the chain. So, and even when it gets to our side, because now we're storing it in Pi, we can buffer it if it goes for days, and our logic will, you know, just pull it as it needs it, so it buffers it in our local Pi system too, which is something we didn't necessarily have with a bespoke system on the site.
So I know this is incredibly improbable, but what's your strategy if you have a customer who doesn't have a Pi system?
So, I'll answer that from a technical perspective. We have the ability to set up a Pi system specific to the data that we're processing and collecting, specifically to capture that data and send it through Cloud Connect to our process. So that's how the arrangement's been set up. So we haven't had that challenge yet. We do have one customer that we're talking to that has a GE prophecy system, and that's how we'll address that for them.
Over here. Hey. So you mentioned earlier that you were doing some monitoring on your side to pick up if you haven't been receiving data from one of the sites. And I'm just a little bit curious exactly how you're doing that. We recently added some performance counters to Cloud Connect, so I was curious if you were doing that another way or if you were using the performance counters.
No, so what we're doing, and you know, when we get into how they actually programmed it, that's way over my head. But because we've created a service to go out and basically it goes through the list of units that we're processing and says, okay, I have just processed this unit. What's the next unit I need to look at? It goes into the Pi archive and says, wait, I haven't gotten any data from this since the last time I processed data for this unit. Has it been an hour? You know, it's set based, you know, we can configure how long it waits until it alerts us. But it'll say, I haven't gotten data in the last hour. Send somebody an alert that there's something going on here. We haven't gotten current data.
Thanks.
So.
I'm not going to say it. You can ask a question if there are any more questions.
Yeah.
Just
If anybody thinks of anything or has any questions or would like to talk offline about, you know, whatever their experience has been, you know, we have I guess a pod over in the other room there, and we'll be around probably a little while later this evening and all day tomorrow. So don't hesitate, or my contact information was on the slide, so I'd be happy to help you out as best I can.